Hello everyone, and welcome to the University of Maine Cooperative Extension's Getting to Know Your Electric Pressure Cooker webinar. I'm Lisa Fishman, and I work in the Fort Kent office of the Cooperative Extension, and I'll be your host tonight as we get to know your electric pressure cooker. There are lots of different kinds of pressure cookers on the market, 22, 24, 28 different brands. We're going to be using the Instant Pot brand tonight because that's the brand that I am most familiar with and the brand that I have here in our Fort Kent office that I can talk you through. Many of the electric pressure cookers have the same functions. They might have different names for the different buttons, but they essentially do the same type of work. We're going to be talking about the different parts and how you can get familiar with them to start cooking the foods that you really love to cook for you and your family. Before we get into the Instant Pot itself here, into this electric pressure cooker, I do want to let you know that your pressure cooker will come with manuals and instructions and warranty information. For this particular brand, the Instant Pot, I found that the manual tells you about the parts. It tells you how to assemble, disassemble, and reassemble the different parts of your cooker, and it gives very little in the way of how to use the pot for different recipes. This pot also came with a cooking chart for various vegetables, different cuts of meat, and dry beans and peas. A quick guide that came with it, but again, no recipes that I was looking for. This did come with a very abbreviated little booklet with a few recipes in it that I did try. It's a 20-page, probably 18 or 20 recipes in here that came with the pot, and that's what I used for my very first trials with the pot. Excuse me. Other things that are going to come with your Instant Pot or with your electric pressure cooker will vary depending on the model that you purchase and the brand that you purchase. My particular pot came with a trivet as an extra little thing to put inside. It is stainless steel. It is meant to go inside the pot and be submerged in water, to stand in water, and it is intended for food to be cooked on top of it that doesn't want to be down inside that water. So hard-boiled eggs that you can make in here will be stacked up on this trivet and piled above the water. If you're cooking pot and pot, when you have another little pot that you've put your food into that goes in here, oftentimes it'll be on this rack, which is standing above the liquid that's in the pot. And so that's one handy thing that comes with the pot. This model of the pressure cooker that I bought, this particular Instant Pot cooker came with a glass lid. Another Instant Pot cooker that I purchased did not come with the same glass lid. It didn't come with a lid at all. So this was an extra for me. I do know that some pots come with a pair of rice paddles, spoons that come with. Mine did not come with those. And so you just have to look to see what's included in your package when you purchase your electric pressure cooker to see what kind of extra accessories are going to come with your pot. We'll be looking at the main functions that you need to get familiar with before you use your pot. And the very first thing we're going to tackle is the cover, the lid to the electric pressure cooker. So the electric pressure cooker is intended to have captured steam inside this pot, build pressure, and force your food to be cooked through that way. And so it needs to be equipped and designed to hold steam inside and not let it escape. So the lid fits on in a very snug way, and it's a twist on and twist off model. And you heard the beeping, so I do have my model plugged in because I do want to go over some of the features. So I've taken the cover off, And there's an inside that we're going to cover and the outside that we're going to cover. First up, on the outside of this pot here, we're looking at these two items here that are going to be discussed. So the first thing we have here is this is a steam release handle, this button here, and it moves to the side up and down as to whether or not you are telling this pot that you need it to seal, S-E-A-L, you'll put it in the sealing position. And if you want to let steam out, you'll put it in the venting position. Okay, there are holes in the top of this. So what you're doing is you're allowing steam to escape through this vent tube. And the venting is in the cover. And I don't think you can see the little slits in the cover, but there are vents in this little cap that allow the steam to come up through this little regulator here and escape through the top of this dial. And the arm indicator is just whether or not you're going to put it to the venting position or the sealing position. Very important to note that when you do release steam from here, it's going to come out of this with a lot of pressure behind it. And so you don't want to put your hand up to the top to move that, because you're going to get a terrible, very painful steam burn if you do that. You want to always go from the side, moving that side and side, making sure you're not in the line of fire of that steam. Some people will actually use a wooden handled instrument or plastic or anything that they can turn this with that doesn't require them to get too close to it because of the sputtering of hot water and the steam that escapes. Next door to this lever is going to be the float valve, and this is going to be an indicator of when your pot is depressurized or pressurized. When it's depressurized, as it is right now, it's in the resting position. And in this particular model of electric pressure cooker, that float valve is recessed down inside. There's a little hole here that it sits down in. When pressure is in the pot, that's going to rise up and it's going to come up flush with the hardware around this section. So it's going to be right up there flush. In some models, this position is actually the depressurized position. It starts out flush with the hardware, and when pressure is in the pot, it rises above, so it's in relief. It rises up a little bit. So you have to know which kind of pot you have to know which position is going to indicate to you whether or not there's pressure in your pot. The other part of the lid that we see from this angle are these two fins on the side. These are called fins, and they have a purpose, and that is number one, when you're sealing your pot, you're putting the cover on and you're sealing it, you'll know that you've got your lid in the correct position when your fins are directly in line with the handles to the pot. Okay, so that's one thing. The other thing is that the handles themselves have notches cut out in them. They're hollow so that they fit this lid perfectly. So if you're in your pot and you need to do some stirring, but you don't want to put this lid down because it's got all kinds of moisture or food bits and whatnot on there, and you don't want to put this hot lid down on your counter, you can just stand it right up, either left or right, right on the pot itself. So it's very handy, keeps it all right there. Okay, so that's what you can see from the top of the lid. When you flip the lid to the inside, there are a couple things we want to talk about here as well. So we did say that we've got our steam release valve here, this big button on the top. And underneath that, we have this little metal basket, okay? And in this particular model of pressure cooker, this comes right out. There are some models where it doesn't come out. It's a permanent attached piece. This one will pop out. The instructions tell you to remove it by putting both of your thumbs up against this and pushing toward the edge of the lid to get that to pop out. The very first time you do this with your new pot, it is very difficult to get this dislodged. But afterward, it pops right out with just one thumb and hardly any pressure. It comes right off, and that's wonderful. And this is just the anti-blocking shield. So that's so that no little bits of food that you're cooking can come up and get into that vent tube and interfere with any pressure being able to be released. We don't want any clogs that are happening there. So that comes on and off, and again, once you've gotten that off, it pops off very easily. Next door to that, we had said on the other side here, we have our float valve. Okay, our float valve. Flip that over. On the back side of the float valve, there's a little silicone cap. We can pop that little silicone cap right off, and when we do that, our float valve comes right out. And we can also pop this out and inspect it and clean that. Our steam release arm also pops right out. So when all of these parts are taken out, you can get in here for a good cleaning, and you can run any of these pieces through the dishwasher. In fact, you can run the whole lid through the dishwasher. It is dishwasher safe. One other thing you want to pop out of here that can also go in the dishwasher is your sealing ring. So all of the pressure cookers will have a sealing ring in here. Some are removable. I believe there's a couple models where the rings are not removable, but you want to be able to pull yours right out. And they do pop out. They're flexible, and they're held in place by the sealing ring guard or rack. That pops right out. And they should be supple and pliable when you take them out, when you use them, when you wash them. You want to inspect for any cracks or tears that may have occurred along the way. They are grooved, so they fit into the lid in a very specific way. They can't be flipped around or reversed. They only fit in one way. These will take on some odors from what you've been cooking with. So many people will buy replacement rings or secondary rings, and they will set aside different colors for the different types of foods they're cooking. Similar to how we have different colored cutting boards, that we use one color for meats and one color for vegetables and one color for fruits. You can have different colored rings for the types of food you're cooking. You might want one that just has meat, so you might want one that, if you are prone to cooking Mexican food a lot, and you have a lot of those types of spices like the chili and the cilantro and things, these might take on the smells of those foods. You don't want those transferring into desserts, for an example. So you'd have different colored rings for different types of food. One of the most wonderful things you can make in your electric pressure cooker is a cheesecake. And I really don't know anyone who likes taco flavored cheesecake or curry flavored cheesecake. So keep those rings separate. So again, all of the parts can easily pop right into the dishwasher, and the lid itself is all dishwasher safe. Yahoo! To put this back together, as I said, there's only one way that this ring fits in. You do want to make sure that you use your fingers and you coax that back into place right behind that rack that's holding it in place. Once that's all popped down in, then you can put your float valve back in. Make sure that there's little holes in here. You just want to make sure those are always clear, never plugged. You could use a toothpick just to poke through if there's any starchy buildup of any kind in there, or any little food bits. To hold that in place, use your finger to keep that in that little hole, and pop that silicone cap right back on the end of the vent tube itself. And then our food trap, Again, it looks like a little salt shaker cap. It's got little holes. It's made of stainless steel. That goes right back onto the base of the steam release arm. And then the steam release arm itself goes right back into place. So now you've reassembled your lid, and those are all the functions there. The inside of your pot is going to have an inner cooking pot. This is removable and also dishwasher safe. It's going to be marked with a couple of important markings here. And this one has a half mark and a 2/3 mark. You don't want to have your pot less than a half full, because then the temperatures that are given in any given recipe will overcook the food you have in there. You may run the risk of having overcooked tough food, or you may have burnt food, or you may actually have food that is inedible because it has scorched and burned on to such a degree that you can't even eat it. The other mark is the 2/3 mark. You never want to cook in your pot if it's more than 2/3 of the way full. That's also because you have been given certain times that food will cook. In this pressure cooker, if you fill to more capacity, then you may actually undercook your food. And if you're talking about any meat, poultry, fish, anything that has runs a higher risk of foodborne illness and someone getting contaminated food, that would come from undercooking food. So you want to adhere to the 2/3 mark. Do not go over 2/3 full, but also don't go under half full. Those are the marks here. It's a nice stainless steel pot, and we do recommend, and the manufacturer recommends, that you use non-metal utensils so that you reduce any scraping or scratching or scarring up the surface of this pot. If you do that, then it makes it more likely that you have a surface where food can suddenly start sticking to that surface, and that'll increase the opportunities for burnt food to happen. When you get food that's burnt on or starts to overcook and burn on to the bottom, your pot will indicate here on the LCD display that you have burnt food, and it'll shut off. It'll turn off and stop cooking. You don't want that to happen. So stick with wood, silicone, food grade plastic, heat resistant plastic, and that's going to be a great thing for you to do. So we have the silicone pot, and then we have the base of the cooker itself, and there's a couple functions and features on here I do want to go over before we hit the display and all the buttons. So the hardware that this pot is made of a sturdy plastic and metal material. And then you have the outer pot. So this is your inner cooking pot. It goes inside. You have the outer basin, the outer pot it's referred to. And that's made of heavy steel as well. It's enamel covered. And in the base of this bottom is the heat unit itself. This silver thing here in the middle, it goes up and down, just indicates to the pot that there's food in here. The pot is in place and the food is in there, and so it's okay to give the signal to start cooking whenever you punch the information into the LCD display. This gets very warm. So we have the heat coming here, but metal conducts heat. So this also gets very warm, as well as up here at the top. You do want to be careful for burns. The same is true for the top of the lid. The parts that are metal do conduct heat. You want to be careful when removing that lid that you don't come in contact with the metal parts, because they are quite warm. Across the top here, and this is easier to see because I have red against black, the plastic running around the top is flat, and it is called the condensation reservoir. And any moisture that's going to seep out of your pot during cooking, it's not uncommon for a little bit of moisture to escape, not lots, but a little bit, a few droplets here and there. Or when you take your cover off your pot, and you set it up here, all of that condensation from your cover is going to drip down, and it's going to drip down here into this reservoir and collect here. Around the back of your pot, you'll see this is where your lid settles in here and twists into place. There's a wide landing place here. Okay, and there's a little hole. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there's a little hole here. So when you have enough condensation that starts pooling up in this reservoir, it'll start coming back here and drip down into that hole. On the back of your pot is a plastic, again, dishwasher safe, condensation reservoir cup. And that just clips onto the back right underneath that hole, because it's designed that way to capture all that excess liquid. I do want to say that when you do take your lid apart after each use and you wash it, please remember to go back to your pot, and this just clips on the back here. Please remember to go behind your pot and pop this condensation cup off and give that a good cleaning as well. Too many people forget about this, and it starts collecting different condensation drippings from various cookings, and that's just food bacteria. And once that bacteria has been given moisture and a nice warm temperature and a host of food to grow on, it's just going to start getting green and fuzzy and blue and pink and all kinds of colors in there of just growing bacteria, which is really unhealthy and potentially toxic. So please remember to clean that condensation cup. Don't let it get out of control with growing molds and bacteria back there. This particular pot is a 6-quart model of the Instant Pot, and the 6-quart model has a feature whereby the electrical cord is removable. And to me, that's perfect, because if I'm taking this to a potluck, every time I have taken my slow cooker somewhere, that darn cord is always dragging behind somewhere. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to catch on something. Whether I'm walking out the door and it catches on the cupboard, the cabinet knob on my way out, it always catches on something, or I close it in the door. When I close my door and I open it when I'm at my destination, there's my cord crimped into the door. So I'm really glad that this is a removable feature. Larger models, the 8-quart and up, do not have a removable cord. It is built into the base and you cannot remove it. But I think that's really great for the smaller quart, 6-quart size. Plug this back in so our LCD display comes back up. Also on this product, not sure how well you can see it, but here at the base there's also like a little plastic holder with a slot in it, similar to the handle. There's a little slot back here. And I did mention at the beginning that some models come with rice paddles, and mine did not. Mine came with a cover and not the rice paddles. This is a holder for that rice paddle. Okay, they slip right in here. One of those will slip right in here. So again, you don't have to lay that dirty rice paddle anywhere on the counter and get that all dirty too. That'll just stand right in here. Other than that, what we have left to discuss is this intimidating LCD panel. So we're going to put our pot in here. We're going to put our cover on. We're going to talk about a couple of other things. So before you cook at all, it's recommended that you do what's known as the water test. And that'll be in your user manual for this particular pot, and any other electric pressure cooker you purchase will have instructions on how to do a water test. And that is simply adding a specified amount of water to your cooker and running through some of the buttons here to get familiar with what they do and to get familiar with the sounds your pressure cooker is going to make. So if I twist my cover off, there's a sound there. If I take the cover off, there's also a sound. If I put it on, there's a sound. And if I twist it into place, there's a sound. Okay, so get familiar with the sounds your pot makes when you're doing different things. That's going to go far in giving you peace of mind you're doing the right thing. So on here, there are different displays. And I'm going to put your mind at ease right now and say most of these you won't probably be using. You may, that's definitely your prerogative, but my experience and the experience of many of my colleagues across the country, we've teamed up and shared information on the Instant Pots and on the electric pressure cookers and what's working and what doesn't. We have mostly found that people aren't using most of these buttons. There's a few that are the most important buttons that we'll go over. So the ones that you're probably not going to use the most are the pre-programmed buttons. And those are up here on the top to the left and the right of the LCD display. So those are going to be the soup and broth, the meat and stew, the beans and chili, and poultry. Those are all here on this side. And over here, you're probably not going to use much the rice, the multigrain, or the porridge, or the steam functions. Okay, again, depending on specifically what you're making. But what most people are putting in their electric pressure cookers and what most people are interested in cooking in these products are not these items. Okay, so what you're going to be more focused on, so let's just put those aside for now. What you're mostly going to be focused on are the buttons that are down here. Specifically, you want to know about the pressure cook. On this model, it's pressure cook, or it's also known as the manual button. And that just means you're taking control. You're not going to take anyone's suggestions about how long a food should cook for. You're going to determine how long it cooks for. So you're going to press the pressure cook, and then you're going to put in the amount of time that you want the food in here to cook for by using the plus or minus buttons that are on this display. Okay, so plus will add time, minus will decrease time. Your pot will remember the time that you put in from the last time you used it. So it'll start from there. So it's not a sign or anything if you turn this on and it says 18 minutes. You know, like, where did 18 minutes come from? Am I supposed to cook my chicken for 18 minutes? That's just saying, no, last time you used me, you had me sit for 15 minutes, and that's what I'm still saying. So you can toggle the time up or down by using the plus or minus buttons. The other thing on here you're going to want to get to be familiar with is the cancel button. So you put in your pressure cook, you put in your time, and if you do nothing, once you indicate pressure cook and you manually put in your time, if you do nothing for 10 seconds, that's how long the pot has to think about it, is 10 seconds. If you do nothing for 10 seconds, then the pot will click on and start following the instructions you gave it. You have 10 seconds to change your mind. If after maybe 30 seconds, you say, oh no, here are my onions sitting here on my counter. Those were supposed to go in the pot too. I forgot about them. No problem. Just hit cancel, depressurize your pot, add those onions in, and start over again. No big deal. So cancel is a great button to use. It's a nice button to use. Okay, it really sets it back to 0. All it says is, I'm done with the function I was working on and I'm going back to 0 so I can do something else. Another button on here that you would really like to use, some people like the delay start button. That is a great button to use as long as you remember about food safety. And food safety says we don't want any foods sitting in our crock pots or in our electric pressure cookers for more than 2 hours at room temperature on a regular day. If it's super hot, right now we don't have to worry about that so much, but when it was super hot this summer, I would never have taken chicken out of my refrigerator and put it in this pot and said, in 6 hours, turn yourself on. That's way too long for such a hot temperature that we had this summer for perishable foods to be out at room temperature. So you want to use common sense. If I am saying, you know what, I'm gonna set this up to go off in 2 hours so that when I come home from running errands, my lunch is ready, that's great. Because it's cooler time of year, and 2 hours or a little bit less is fine for most foods to be in this pot waiting to be cooked. Don't overuse it. Don't use long delays. You'll just be setting yourself up for nasty foodborne illness. Nobody likes food poisoning. Nobody likes any of the side effects that come from food poisoning, and nobody likes to be in the hospital for food poisoning. So common sense, when in doubt, don't do any risky food behaviors. But that is a button that can be used under limited circumstances. The keep warm button on here, after you finished cooking something, when your time is up, then automatically your pot will stop cooking and it'll automatically go to keep warm. It'll keep your food warm. It won't turn off and let food become cold. It'll just go on to the keep warm function and keep that food held at a safe temperature until you eat that, till you get it out of the pot and do something with it. But it is going to stay at a nice safe temperature for you. 2 functions on here that are terrific because they can also take the place of other appliances or other methods that you have to do when you're using other appliances. Slow cook and saute. Yes, this can be a slow cooker. The only thing you have to do to turn this into a slow cooker is not use this lid. So this lid traps in all of the steam and all of the moisture and all of the pressure so that we have food cooking at a very high temperature to make it safe. When we're slow cooking, we don't want anything like that happening. That'll be too hard and too high a temperature, too hard a cooking method and too high a temperature for our foods in a slow cooker. So if we're going to use our electric pressure cooker as a slow cooker function, we'll take off the cover and we'll replace it with a cover like this, okay? If you don't have to go out and order a specific cover, in this case from Instant Pot or from Presto or from Crock-Pot brand or for any other brand that's out there. You can just look in your cupboards and you might have a universally fitting cover. So try that out first, go to garage sales or yard sales, really draw the circumference of your pot on a piece of paper and carry that with you. And every time you hit a yard sale that has assorted pots and pans and covers and lids for sale for 50 cents or whatever, pull out your piece of paper, see if it lines up, and buy yourself a really cheap replacement to be able to use. So that would go on here, and then you can go ahead and use the slow cook function. When you press the slow cook function, you'll be asked a couple of questions. You'll have the option to, you won't be asked the questions, you'll have an option or two. And that is whether or not you want to, just like your regular slow cooker at home, do you want to have a low function or a high function on your slow cooker? And you can choose that here too. There's 3 white bars across the center of this LCD display. And they say less, normal, more. I love companies that have to redefine terms we've always grown up with. Low, medium, high is the same as less, normal, more. So if you want to be at a low function, if you would normally have something for a lower heat for a longer period of time on your slow cooker, then you would opt for the less button. If you would prefer to have this cook for a shorter period of time at a higher temperature, you would select the more button. And you just toggle until you get that to the setting that you want. And then somewhere in between is the normal function that you can have for the amount of heat going to your product. Okay, so you can do that. And then the last function that you might find over here that's really useful is the saute function. Now, oftentimes we use our slow cookers or our crock pots and we're going to put something like stew into there. It'll tell us to brown the meat first on the stove. So we have to drag out a skillet, put our meat in there, brown that up, sear that off, and then add that to the slow cooker. And now we've got two dirty products. We've got the dirty frying pan and we've got our dirty slow cooker that we're working with. This product eliminates that step of having to go to the stove to brown something first. So again, you would not use any cover at all. And you would select the saute feature on here. And as soon as you select saute, it's gonna say on. And if you wave your hand over the top, you're gonna start to feel some heat coming on. That's coming up to a warm or hot temperature for you. Again, you can choose whether or not you want less, normal, or more as the amount of heat coming into your pot. Your pot is going to heat just like a frying pan. The bottom of this is going to get warm. When the LCD indicates hot, it's time to put in your oil or your fat or your whatever you're cooking in, coconut oil, and then you can start doing your sauteing in here. Okay, so it eliminates a step, which is great. After you finished the sauteing bit, then you would hit cancel. So it stops the heat from coming there, because then you've got something else you need to do. You need to then set it to a different function, probably the pressure cook function at that point once you add more food in here. Okay. So there's two other features. There's a yogurt button on this particular model and this particular brand. Other brands also have a yogurt function, and it makes terrific yogurt. While some people were all busy making sourdough bread while they were home during COVID-19, this girl was busy making a lot of Greek yogurt. It takes just regular milk and a couple of tablespoons of a yogurt. So I just purchased a small container of plain Greek yogurt from the store. I added in a gallon of milk. You can use skim milk, 2%, whole milk, whatever you want. I added in my milk and my little bit of yogurt starter, and then it is a lengthy process, and it's a two-step process, but I heated up my milk and yogurt, and then stirred it up a little bit. I can't remember what the second step was, and then it went for about an 8-hour cook time after that. Once that was finished, I didn't want the creamier, the smoother, thinner type of yogurt, more like a Swiss style yogurt. I wanted the much thicker Greek style yogurt. So I poured my entire pot's worth of mixture into double cheesecloth and let that hang. And overnight, again, I got, like 3 cups of whey that came out of there. And I had the most delicious, delicious Greek yogurt. It kept well. I nibbled on it every day, and it was delicious. And I could add anything I wanted for toppings. I could add, toasted coconut. I could add cranberries. I could add nuts, fruit, anything I wanted in there. It was delicious. So the yogurt function is definitely a really good one for me. And I think that's about it on the LCD display here. I have learned recently that you can make popcorn in here. Again, you put it on the saute function, just like you would if you were popping popcorn on your stovetop. Put it on the saute function. When it's hot, add yourself a little bit of oil and put your popcorn kernels in. And you want to use a loose fitting lid, so that some of the moisture can get out while that's going on. You don't want to use the tight fitting lid. When you're cooking, you want to always make sure you have the minimum of 1 cup of water or other similar liquid in here. Okay, and that's what's going to help create the steam that gets locked in, that does that cooking for us. It is recommended water or anything of a similar property that has enough fluidity to it and has enough moisture content in there to give off the steam you need. So what's countable as water would be clear juices, would be beer, would be wine, would be cider, broth, soup stock, anything that's clear and about 99.9% water anyway. What doesn't count as water is milk, dairy products, because they actually have a lot of sugar in them, and they tend to scorch on, and dairy products tend to curdle under the high heat unless they're added at the very end. Tomato sauces, tomato juices do not count. Orange juice does not count. Again, they have more pulp and they have different properties that don't make them as liquid, as fluid as water or some of the other products that I mentioned. You don't want to add dairy products until the very end of a cook time. If you have multiple ingredients that are in your dish that you're making, you want to make sure that you don't have your pastas or your rices down at the bottom because that's where the highest heat is, and those items tend to burn on and scorch most easily. I have spoken to a lot of friends across the country, as I mentioned, and shared that I have had some issues with certain recipes, and they have been terrific at either helping me out themselves or pointing me to different websites or blogs where that type of issue was answered, and I could go there and get a great answer. I've had also many unsuccessful attempts at using the electric pressure cooker. My first few times were horrendous until I talked with people. And I found that because I didn't get real good information out of the manuals that came with this product, I was left to go to the internet. And that's a great way to get information. If we were talking about a canning recipe, I would never, in my wildest dreams, ever point someone to go look for a recipe online. I would always point to a research-based, safe type of recipe to follow. But when you're talking about the world of just pressure cooking, the sky is the limit. You don't want to eat undercooked food. You don't want to eat burnt food. So it'll be up to you to tweak some of the recipes to your own preferences that you like, you know, eliminating spices, adding some vegetables. It really doesn't matter. You can really have freedom to try out as much as you want and to tweak a recipe until it comes out right. I've had numerous failures with rice pudding recipes, and a colleague of mine in Idaho last week shared with me her rice pudding recipe, and I didn't get a chance to make it this past weekend, but it is on my list. I am going to get success with rice pudding at some point, and I'm hoping it's her recipe that'll do it for me. But until then, you can certainly have a good time experimenting. I think that's most of what I wanted to talk about here today. Another thing, the last thing I do want to mention is a safety feature, a little bit in the design of this product. So when you're putting on the lid and you are ready to cook food, you are going to, again, you're going to choose the sealing position. And when your food is finished cooking, it's going to tell you either to quickly release the steam from this pot or to slowly release the steam from this pot. Okay, and the quick release will be known as the abbreviation QR in any recipe you're following. And that is going to say, I'm finished cooking, you finished cooking a food, you want to get the pressure to drop quickly and you want the steam out of there quickly, you'll slide your control to the venting position right away, either using your hand or earlier, like I said, using a spoon or some other item. And that's going to plume right out of here very quickly. And as soon as that is done, you'll get an indicator that your time is up, and your float valve will drop down to indicate that you have no more pressure left in here. And you can twist this off and take the cover off and get to your food. The other method of releasing the pressure is known as the natural release. And so you have your food in here, you have your timer set, and you have set this to sealing, and your time is up. And the natural release, known by the abbreviation NR, is going to say, great, just walk away and let nature take its course. And when the pressure drops out of here in its own good time and your float valve drops down, then you can open that up. Okay, and that might take anywhere from 15 minutes to a half an hour, maybe to 40 minutes, depending on what you've got in there, how much food you have packed in there that needs to come down and lose its pressure. You might also be given a combination of a quick release and a natural release. And that's because certain foods are going to be reacting differently to the very high temperature. So for instance, when you have something like vegetables that you're cooking in here, you want to get them out of there as soon as their cook time is done, or you run the risk of having mush. So that would be a quick release. Broccoli, asparagus, anything like that, you want a quick release on. Okay, so they would finish cooking, you would hit venting, and that vent will start taking place right away. If it's something that is liquid, like a soup, if it is something that is known to swell or give off a lot of foam during the cooking, like rice, like pasta, a lot of grains, barley and quinoa and whatnot, or a clear, like soups, like chicken stew, chicken soup, beef stew, any of those things with a lot of liquid in there. Those products are going to ask you to do a combination. It's going to ask you to let it naturally release for a while. So the cook time is up. You're going to just leave that in the sealing position for a while until those foods calm down. Now again, boiling point of anything is 212 degrees. In the pressure cooker, we could be up to 230, 240 degrees. So you know when something is rapidly boiling on your stovetop, what that looks like. Okay, it bubbles and splutters everywhere. When you are looking at much higher temperatures, you can only imagine how much that's really flying around inside the pot. If you were to do a quick release at that time, you're going to have a volcano of soup or pasta water or anything like that coming flying out of this little vent right here on top of your pressure arm. That's not going to be pretty. That's going to be potentially dangerous. So you don't want any of these foods that are so hot erupting out of here in a fast manner. So you're going to let those naturally release for a while. And instructions will tell you natural release for 10 minutes and then quick release the remainder. And that just means that they want you to let the food calm down before you get the rest of the pressure out of there. Some foods like a pot roast, or if you've got chicken or meats or anything in here cooking, will tell you to just go ahead and naturally release that product anyway. You know, you don't have to hurry, and the slow natural release is actually part of the cook time for these products. So follow your instructions about quick release and natural release, and which foods you should always quick release, which foods you should naturally release on their own, and then go with your gut instinct and create recipes on your own using the information you learned. The safety problem that comes up is that this little vent tube here, this venting area, when that gets released to a quick release, the plume of steam that comes out is hot and it's wet and it's very forceful. And in my particular home, I don't have an island where I can set this cooker on to cook that doesn't have any cabinets above me. So when I use mine, the first couple times I did this, I thought, this is awful. This is not good. The underside of my cabinets is going to get ruined. So I had to either fairly unsafely nudge this to the very edge of my counter, and the plume would just miss my cabinets up above. And I didn't feel safe having it so close to the edge of my counter. Or the better method that I developed was to take a cookie sheet and put that on my stovetop. And when I'm ready to release this, I move this over to my stovetop and release it so it goes right up into my cooking vent. And then I don't have a problem with ruining my cabinetry that's right above this pot. So you do want to be careful of that. I believe I have covered everything that I wanted to cover with you about the parts of the pressure cooker and the general how-tos about what some of these buttons do, what some of the functions are for, and how you can adapt this tool to best be used in your home. I can be reached for questions in a couple of ways. The first is by telephone. You can call me. I'm Lisa Fishman, and I work in Fort Kent at the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Office there. And that phone number is toll-free, 1-800-287-1421. And again, that's Lisa Fishman, and I'm at 1-800-287-1421. You can also reach me by email, and that is lisa.fishman, F-I-S-H-M-A-N, at Maine, M-A-I-N-E, .edu. Lisa Fishman, lisa.fishman at maine.edu. And I hope you enjoyed our class tonight, and I look forward to seeing you another time when we're not doing COVID classes online. Take care, everyone, and have a great night.